I define Liga MX as the shoot your shot league.
You do expect higher performances and better things from Club Americas, but it's the inconsistencies.
Isn't this inconsistent though?
I will maintain that the U.S. men's national team came out to the knockout round despite terrible coaching.
Like, they have a student discount maybe to go to Pumas games? Like, they got it, right?
No.
To take that next step, I think it's still undisputed that you have to go to Europe.
He's going to be on the ground for the majority of the time. No,
I don't
look back
wanna
at
say-
highlights.
That's the Christian Pulisic treatment, though.
Same.
We're going to have to stop this. We're going to start arguing on this podcast, aren't we?
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Real Futbol Show. I'm Lizzy, and as always, with my co-host, Geno Gonnello. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's 4th of July week here in America. You can hear me?
So much enthusiasm. I love it.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I'm very excited. I thought you couldn't hear me, but it turns out you can hear me too well. No, it's 4th of July week here. We've had a couple days off here in the U.S. A 90 min. Lizzy probably has not taken a day off because she works so hard all the time. But yeah, it's been good. Lots of soccer to talk about. The U.S. is rolling. Mexico, rolling through the group stages. Kind of what we expected for the most part, except for maybe Canada and how things turned out with them. But we'll get into all of it. We'll get into everything we need to talk about. But it's good. How are you today?
I'm good. Yes, as you just said, so much going on. North American football is in full swing. We have the U.S. women's national team preparing for the World Cup. We have Leagues Cup right around the corner. MLS All-Star, which we're going to be at on the ground. So stay tuned at 90 Min for all that content. Just everything going on. Obviously, MLS, again, full swing. Everything is piling up. And international soccer on the men's side, we have Gold Cup. So we'll sleep in October. It's fine.
It feels like it never stops. It really doesn't ever stop. I mean, we've been going. U.S. soccer, for example, has been going since last February when they started MLS camp back in 2022. We've had MLS. We've had obviously MLS does not take a break for the summer. They run through the summer. So, and then their break, they had a little bit of a break for World Cup, and as World Cup ended, MLS was starting to get back into full swing with media day and then training camps. And it has been crazy. And once again, we have another U.S. men's national team tournament. They're coming. What do they say in England? They're coming thick and fast. Is that what they say? I think that's what I
defer to our UK site.
I don't know. We're going to have to, but they say something like that. It's fun. It's a fun statement.
Also forgot to mention Liga MX is back. They played last week. They are playing this weekend. They are playing one more round before taking a pause for the Leagues Cup tournament, the month-long joint Liga MX MLS World Cup style tournament from July 21st to August 19th. So that'll be an exciting one. But today, really, we're going to talk about international football, U.S. men's national team, Canada, Mexico, before diving into MLS, looking back at El Trafico, before looking ahead to which games you should tune into this weekend, and all things soccer. So to kick off, we have the U.S. men's national team who are facing Canada in the quarterfinals, which I'm sure CONCACAF was not necessarily looking to two of their biggest competitors facing off in the quarterfinal. But we can blame Canada for that a little bit later on.
So before we get into this, I want to talk about how this should have worked out and how it ended up working out. How it should have worked out would have left Jamaica, Mexico, and Canada all on the same side of the table, I think. Which seems wrong, right? Like, I feel like.
Yeah, but also
I feel like that's tough. In the end, it honestly worked out probably better from a competitive standpoint, maybe in the fact that, U.S. doesn't have. I mean, not that Panama's anything to scoff at, but they would have Panama, Qatar, and Guatemala on their side if it worked out that way, and instead it's Canada on their side now. So I mean, I don't know. It just seems a little weird that in my opinion, the U.S. and the other three nations that are with them in the top four, all three of them would have been on the same side of the table coming in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, it would have been a little bit difficult, but I think CONCACAF kind of banks on the fact that you have your Giants facing off in the later rounds of the tournament, so you'll still have those great matchups. They'll just be in semifinals and finals, but that's not the case here. Guatemala beat Canada in the group to top the group, so Canada came in second place, and I guess to get Canada off the bat right away, we can kind of dive into how it's falling into pieces. It's just
it's
all around. I think Canada kind of went into this tournament with their quote unquote B squad, kind of letting all the European-based players head off back to do preseason with their team, except following the footsteps as the U.S. men's national team, except they failed to take into account that they don't necessarily have a competitive secondary squad to head into these tournaments. So really, I mean, that last game against Cuba where Cuba managed to score on penalties, and I believe it ended 4-2. It was just chaos altogether. And I don't mean any disrespect to Cuba, but really when all the other opponents beat them with a clean sheet, really, as they claimed not so long ago to be CONCACAF giants now, they really should be doing better.
Yeah, I mean they had. I think this is the thing, right? It's they've claimed that they are the top of the CONCACAF, the best of the best. They've been doing the trash talking. I feel like a lot. I feel like we've obviously heard a lot of talk from John Herdman, whether it be in the World Cup and some of the other things that he said. I mean, it feels like there's been a lot of talk surrounding Canada or based out of the Canadian camp, and they've got nothing really to show for it. They haven't won any trophies. They haven't really dominated. They got kicked out of the World Cup without really much of a fight. And listen, this is not saying that Canada doesn't have a great team, but the depth isn't there. So when they brought their B team, I don't think the expectation should have been that they would have gone far in this tournament. But against Cuba, Guatemala, and Guadalupe, you would expect them to do so much better. Like you said, Guadalupe scored in like the 90th minute to tie their match against them. They tied with Guatemala, Canada. I mean, these are nations that don't frequently feature in the hexagon when we play in World Cup qualifiers. So these aren't teams that they should be losing to. But again, it comes down to depth. And Canada, while they do have a very good A team, their B team is just not up to par with the rest of CONCACAF.
I mean, questionable. Their A team is also to a certain extent questionable, but I completely agree. I mean, they advanced from the group stage with one victory, given that they were in one of the relatively easier groups of the Gold Cup. I mean, Jamaica is not easy, and that was in the U.S. men's national team group. Haiti, not necessarily the easiest, and Qatar also not the easiest in Mexico's group. They really
and Honduras. I mean, Honduras is very good in Mexico's group too. I mean, Honduras has made a hex before, so.
Yeah, not necessarily the most difficult opponents for Canada, and yet you're drawing against Guatemala and Guadalupe, and just really skating by a win against Cuba, whereas you saw the difference with Mexico winning 4-0, the U.S. men's national team winning 6-0. I mean, Canada really didn't have any type of celebration on that end, and I think it'll be extremely interesting to see them face off against the U.S. men's national team this time around on, I believe, on Sunday?
It is Sunday, yes. Sunday at 7:30, I think it is. 7:30 Eastern time. Of course, that is the posted time. I don't know whether it's actually going to start until 8 o'clock. So
we love CONCACAF.
Just be prepared for that. Who knows what channel it'll be on? I mean, they're very good at not telling you where to watch.
All that information on 90min.com/US.
Yes,
so if you need any information, head on there. But yeah, no, it'll be definitely an interesting showing, given that it's their B team against a U.S. men's national team B team with, I do want to say, some C-level substitutes. We've seen quite a bit of injuries go on at the American camp with the kind of exit of Alan Sonora, who got injured, Jordan Morris, who's questionable. We had Jackson Yuil kind of come in and be that for BJ Callahan in his last showing as U.S. Men's national team interim manager. So it's not necessarily the best of the best from either side. It'll kind of just be a competition of who has more depth. And I think we know how that's going to go, but still interested to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, going back to Canada, I mean, their group featured the 166th best team based on FIFA rankings, according to FootMob, and the 136th best team, according to FootMob, in terms of FIFA. Guadalupe doesn't even have a ranking based on FootMob, so I'd have to look that up to see what it is. And they tied 2 of those games. And meanwhile, Trinidad and Tobago is the 101st best team, which is better than any of the other teams in Canada's group, and the U.S. beat them 6-0. So I think this is probably going to be, I mean, listen, what I will say is, it's Canada, it's U.S., it's not, I think it's not hard to get up for these games, whereas maybe against a Guadalupe, a Guatemala, Cuba, you're like, oh, we'll probably walk through this one, and then you get surprised and you die. They know what to expect with the U.S. They know it's going to be a fight. But I find it hard to believe the U.S. is going to slip up here, even with some of the injuries. This team is firing on all cylinders since, they didn't play great against Jamaica, but have really made up for it in the games against Trinidad and Tobago and St. Kitts and Nevis. So I think the U.S. wins this one in impressive fashion. I mean, again, you look back just a couple weeks ago, really, they played the A team, the U.S. with their A team, and they handled Canada pretty well. So I'd imagine it's going to be a similar showing in this one.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm excited for this U.S. men's national team side. I think giving a chance to Major League Soccer figures, I like quite a few. I think it's a perfect time to dive right into the criticism and extreme hatred that the U.S. men's national team fan base has against Jesus Ferreira, who is tying Landon Donovan's hat trick records. And we can go into comparing who scored against who and the ranking for what, but really Jesus Ferreira is proving himself to be quite a useful player for the team, even if it's in a B level fashion. So do you think that's fair?
So when it comes to Jesus Ferreira, I would like to give him his credit first. Like, most importantly, scoring hat tricks in any game against any opposition. It's not like Messi was going out and scoring hat tricks against, the bottom La Liga team every time they went out there. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do to score a hat trick. And granted, we're talking about Trinidad and Tobago and St. Kitts and Nevis, but the most, appropriate comparison here is, in 2017 when we were, competing in the World Cup qualifiers and we had to play Trinidad and Tobago and we needed to win that match to go to the World Cup.
We didn't.
Nobody scored any goals in that one. So nobody scored any hat tricks in that one. So we need to give Jesus Ferreira his credit. And what I will say is one of the things Jesus Ferreira has done is consistently score in the MLS, which as I will always say, consistently warrants him being called up to the national team. He is performing for his club what he can do. What is in front of him, he is doing. And, we haven't seen it at the national team level. We're finally starting to see it now. And he scored, 11, 12 goals now already in what is like 4 games. He's still very young. He's got a lot of room to develop. And, listen, when you look at the rankings of the U.S. men's national team forwards, he's not 1 or 2 in my book right now. But in my opinion, if he can keep scoring, I mean, again, he's not playing with the Pool 6. He's not playing with the Weston McKinneys or the Tim Weahs. He's playing with the B team, and he's scoring these goals. He still has some things he's overcoming here. So in my book, he's above Josh Sargent. I mean, I haven't seen anything from Josh Sargent in regards to scoring goals at the national team level on a consistent basis. So Jesus Ferreira, in my opinion, has made a big name for himself and a big jump and has taken advantage of this opportunity that he's been given with the U.S. men's national team, and I hope he succeeds.
But my thing is, I don't necessarily think he has to be number 1 or he has to be number 2. There are certain players that are good for certain tournaments. That's the magic of having depth, is you get to choose who for what. And so Jesus Ferreira is an excellent CONCACAF player. I think he thrives in these tournaments. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to translate to World Cup tournaments, World Cup games or other tournaments. And maybe when Copa America rolls around, he may not be the first choice, but he doesn't have to be. I think there's a thin line between appreciating what he can do and then translating into then he has to do it on a bigger stage, or that means he beats X player to the starting 11 spot. The thing about depth is you want those options, you want those choices, and he's he's an excellent player as a choice, as an option. I think he's delivering when he has to, which is an excellent purpose for the U.S. men's national team. I personally don't understand the hate he's receiving, saying he's not enough, he's not this. But he doesn't have to be. When you put him in front of these CONCACAF teams, he's defeating them, he's scoring, he's getting hat tricks, he's giving you moments to celebrate. So stay there.
Yeah, the two things I want to add to that too is, listen, you can only play who's in front of you. He can only go out there for the U.S. men's national team and play who's in front of him. So the arguments about him not scoring against better teams, listen, I mean, no number 9 in the past however many years has scored against these better teams on a consistent basis. And so just having someone scoring is great. And I think a lot of this hatred comes from his performances in the World Cup and seeing how he was poor in the World Cup. And granted, I think, I don't know, it just feels like this team now is more fluid, which fits his style and attack more, because he's very good on the ball, moving off the ball, making the runs. But the hate is unwarranted, and we should be happy that, honestly, I don't care who scores the goals. I just want them to do it. I just want them to put the ball in the back of the net. So whether it's Florian Balogun or Fuller and Balogun, whether it's Ricardo Pepi, whether it's Logan Sargent, I'm thinking of Formula One, whether it's Josh Sargent, whether it's Jesus Ferreira, whether it's Brandon Vasquez, I don't care who does it. I just want them to go out and score goals on a consistent basis against whoever. So there should be no hate towards him. We should be happy he's scoring goals. And if he continues on a consistent basis, that's great. But if he doesn't, and he scores against the bad teams in certain tournaments and doesn't score against the good teams or whatever, that's fine. Who cares? As long as you win trophies, that's what matters, right? I don't care who you with it with.
You mentioned Brandon Vasquez, and I feel extremely sorry for him. I've tweeted out a couple times, and every single time I mention his name, someone comes back to say, oh, you're an FC Cincinnati fan. I'm not. I don't think I've ever been or ever given them a shout out in particular in this podcast. But I do feel bad for the player. I think he's done everything he needs to on a club level to prove himself to be a B team U.S. men's national team player. He's come in as a substitute and he's scored. He's done what he's needed to, and yet he still can't carve out a spot in that starting 11 and is considered even a substitute of the B team, where I don't think that's where his level lies, and I think he's proven that on various occasions. So I don't know, I think he's kind of that forgotten player often, and it makes me sad for him. Again, I think there comes a point where you've proven what you needed to, and a couple of Mexico players said this earlier when they weren't called up for this international window. They say, we're told by the national team coach, or we're told by the board that these are the steps that we need to take in order to reach a national team setting. And we do them, and yet we're still not called up, or we're still not in that starting 11. And I think that's kind of the path Brandon Vasquez is taking. Like, he's scoring, he's getting his team up to great heights, he's given great assists. Last season, scored endless goals for FC Cincinnati, and then has come in as a substitute against these CONCACAF teams, scored, even won the game for the U.S. men's national team a little while back, and yet you still can't give him a bone.
So, yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's tough, right? Because I will always say this, and as I said about Jesus Ferreira, I'll say the same thing about Brandon Vasquez. When it comes, especially in the number 9 position right now with the U.S. and so much uncertainty, when it comes to the number 9 position, you go with players who are in form with their club teams. And Brandon Vasquez has not scored at the club level at the heights that he was scoring last season. So in my book, Jesus Ferreira, just based if we're looking at Jesus Ferreira versus Brandon Vasquez on day one, who to start, it's going to be Jesus Ferreira because he's scoring goals at the club level. But I understand and I agree. Listen, Brandon Vasquez is a very good player, but he needs to. I think he needs, again, with the crowded number 9 room, you're going to need to perform well enough to get in, in your club base, and that's why I don't think Josh Sargent is where he was maybe a few months ago and when the World Cup started, because he's not, he has not performed at the club level to the heights that we would hope he would, especially in the Championship of England. So,
but you wouldn't have started Brandon Vasquez to experiment with the starting 11, given that you were already qualified for the next round in that third group stage match.
I think what they did was I mean, maybe I would have maybe given him 45. I would have, especially after Ferreira got the hat trick, I would have just said, all right, like we'll sit you for the last 45 and we'll put Brandon in. But I would have stuck because they needed, again, you lose that and all of a sudden you find yourself on the same side as Mexico and Jamaica and you have to play Mexico.
Were they like, I believe they were.
Sorry, not Mexico and Jamaica. We find yourself on the same side as Mexico, and then you would. I mean, again, if Canada things worked out, you would have been playing them anyway. But they weren't already through as the number 1.
No, they were qualified already. They weren't qualified as first place, but they were qualified already by the end of the second game. And okay, I agree. If you want to play Ferreira because you want to get that goal difference and you want to come out on top of Group A, I believe. After that hat trick, you're already 3 above Jamaica. So the U.S. men's national team ended up with 12 goals, like goal difference of 12, and then Jamaica with 8. So yeah, give him that second 45. I think
I would have.
My frustration with him is he's not even given that, and so when he does come in to play under BJ Callahan, he scores and he does well. He's fast, proven himself, and find that in the net. So there really is nothing else to do.
No, I mean, yes, I agree. When he's come up to the national level, he's been good. He's scored the goals. He can't do. I mean, listen, you're not scoring hat tricks. And I know Jesus Ferreira did it twice.
At what time? I think he gets like 10 minutes. Like you don't.
No, I know, but even if he doesn't come in, even if he's playing the 90 minutes and he doesn't get a hat trick, but he gets a goal, that's really good. That's like important. Like a goal is good. And he scored the game time goal against Jamaica. Like it's not like he's not putting the ball in the back of the net. He's putting the ball in the back of the net. It's just that it's. Again, I agree that he deserves a shot, and I think he should have gotten that extra 45 because who knows what playing time he's going to get for the rest of the tournament now. But
I don't think much.
When it comes to figuring out these players and who you're going to start game 1 and who is going to be your guy coming into the camp, you go by form. And Jesus Ferreira continues to impress and continues to score goals in MLS in the same league that Brandon Vasquez is doing. And Jesus Ferreira's team is not near, they're not top of the West, so.
But Cincinnati is at the top of the East. You muted yourself. Nope. My argument was just too good. I took away your voice.
Yes, my argument was too good. My apologies. That's what I get for playing with the cord over here, but whatever. Back to my Brandon Vasquez comment. No, it's just like, I guess my point is that Cincinnati's at the top and he's not scoring goals for them. FC Dallas is not at the top. Like their team surrounding Brandon Vasquez is probably better than the team surrounding Jesus Ferreira at FC Dallas.
Well, that's just another topic that we can't delve into right now as we're in.
No, I understand, but my point is when it comes
I understand where you're coming from.
I
do understand. I understand also starting Jesus Ferreira. Yeah, I probably would have started him too coming into the Gold Cup tournament. But I think coming after that Jamaica match where it was Brandon Vasquez who won the game for the U.S. men's national team, I probably would have given him the next first 45. And then traded him off. I don't understand the need to stick with one number 9, again, especially once you're already qualified for the next round. But nevertheless, we are here. And
I think the U.S. men's national team has, is playing favorites a little bit too. I think they like Jesus.
100%. BJ Callahan is sticking with his guy. He has no need for development. He's off after this tournament, so he just wants to win, get another trophy under his name, and he's doesn't really care about what kind of progress you're leaving for the next guy.
I tell you what, though, if, the United States plays Trinidad and Tobago under Greg and they don't score 6 goals, I do not want to be on Twitter, Threads, whatever it is. I do not want to be on Twitter the next day if I'm Greg Berhalter, because people are going to be ripping him apart.
Oh, I
people
cannot
are going to be ripping
wait.
him apart.
It's
going to be
am
wild.
Still in shock that Greg Berhalter is taking over once again. I'm so excited for you. Back to your plateau.
Go team. They just we're gonna get in. We're gonna get into it. We got to move on.
Let's move on, and we will to Mexico, who also qualified to the next round, top of their group. They won the first 2 games with a substantial goal difference to then enter the game against Qatar, no matter the result. Unfortunately, they lost 1-0 at the dreaded Levi Stadium, which is the worst of the stadiums. It was a difficult match, and going into it, the interim manager, Jaime Lozano, tried something new. He switched up that starting 11 that he had used for both the first 2 matches. Obviously, we saw the integration of Gerardo Arteaga, who is coming off of a suspension during the red cards, which I won't get into, but I think it's the most unfair suspension I've ever heard in my entire life. Phase suspension. He was back in that starting 11. Santi Jimenez started.
We're not getting into this. I'm sorry. I'm transitioning, like understanding what you're saying, going through the things here. We're not getting into the red card situation. Who deserved red card?
It's not so much that he got a red card, is that the other 2 were not even inscribed in the Gold Cup tournament, and they got to live out their suspension in the Gold Cup tournament.
Well, that's so funny though. I can't cast the best.
I did not laugh, and I don't think the FMF did either. I don't want to debate whether.
But there was one Mexican player who got a red card, though, right? Who is serving it now too, though, right?
Yes,
because there were 4 red cards. Yeah,
there were 4 red cards. Cesar Montes has an extra game, so he was unable to feature throughout the entire group stage. And Gerardo Arteaga was
because you guys brought your 18.
One.
You guys brought your main. You guys brought a bunch of your main players that also played in the
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I understand.
I don't want to debate about the validity of the actual red card, because I in no way condone violence or any physical altercation. No, very deserved on both sides. The U.S. men's national team in Mexico deserved those red cards. There's no place for that in sports. However, CONCACAF deciding who in what tournament can live out who in what, no, unfair.
No,
anyway,
I mean, it's tough, but I agree with you. Surprisingly, but I agree.
But anyway, we're here and now. So Jimmy Lozano tried a new starting 11 against Qatar with a bunch of new players. He tried Julian Araujo at the back, and there was Charlie Rodriguez, who took over for Eric Sanchez, Chiquito Sanchez. Orbelin came back, obviously, in the wings. There was a lot of changes made to that original starting 11, which he won 4-0 and 3-1, I believe, in the first 2 games of the group stage. And I don't want to necessarily say things went wrong, but it was just one of those games that you see and don't understand when you look at statistically. Mexico had 25 shots. Qatar had 1. The game ended 1-0 in Qatar's favor. They just needed that one game. And so, that one shot. And so what I liked personally, and I know there's a lot of criticism to the result and a lot of criticism to Jimmy Lozano and to what happened at the actual game, what I want to point out is a huge contrast that I've seen under Jimmy and under Tata Martino, because once Mexico went behind and lost or got scored on in early stages of the match, under Tata Martino, Mexico would just stall. Creativity would decrease in a heartbeat. Mexico would plateau. They would play at the back with no real sense of urgency. Whereas this time around, they kept firing. They kept the creativity up. There was just so many moments of that game that you saw and said, that was so unlucky. I think they hit the post 4 times. Henry Martin missed the net by a couple inches on several occasions. Santi Jimenez as well. So it was an unlucky game. I just, in this case, don't want to critique too much because I don't think the score reflects the entirety of the match. But I'm hopeful in that the way it was played out. Obviously, it's not a great result, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Mexico ended on top. Jimmy Lozano tried something new, and I'm personally a fan of trying something new and trying out your players.
Yeah, I mean, especially when friendlies are hard to come by nowadays, in sense of Nations League. And every time you come back for an international break, you're playing in a game that always seems meaningful in some sense or another, or in the summers now, you got tournaments nonstop. And you don't get these players all the time. I think it is good to try them together. I think it's definitely a good idea. Again, should Mexico have lost to Qatar on any facet? No, probably not. Like that, they should have won. They should have won the game, and I think it's fair to say that they should have won the game.
Yeah.
But I think blaming Lozano or blaming, the team, they had 25 shots on goal. They just didn't find the back of the net. The finishing wasn't there, when they played. It's not. I think it's okay. Like you're already through. Why not try some new things out? If the United, again, like I said, when the United States had the situation at the halftime where they were up 3-0, why not put Brandon Vasquez in? And I think it's the same thing here. You're already through. There's nothing to play for. Nothing matters. And granted, that's social media for you. It's going to be, people are going to laugh, United States men's national team, burner accounts or whatever, accounts that follow the team or whatever, they're going to make fun of Mexico. It's just the rivalry, like they would in anything else. But in the end, who cares that you lost the game? You're through. You didn't need to win the game. And I don't think Lozano should be taking any heat for it. I think that this was a meaningless game that meant absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think he took it really well in that he said it was a learning lesson. He's not by any means taking it lightly, but at the same time, it's not the end all be all for the situation. He got to test out, I believe it was like 3 different formations. And for the first time in an extremely long time, Mexico had 2 at the top in what fans have been begging for, having Santi Jimenez and Henry Martin up top. Obviously, he had to kind of show fans that having more strikers doesn't necessarily mean more goals, something that isn't necessarily the most clear to fans. But nevertheless, he tried it, also responding to fans and starting Santi Jimenez in that starting 11, and Julian Araujo, who people had been calling for previously, and just showing how certain things don't work. And he did it in the perfect game because, again, as you said, it was kind of meaningless. Like losing, winning, who really cares? The ending was the same. Not for Honduras or Qatar, because Qatar really needed that win. But yeah, we kind of messed up the standing for everybody else, but kept it the same for ourselves, which is interesting. But looking forward, Mexico now face Costa Rica, who are an interesting opponent. I don't want to say easy by any means. I think they're a CONCACAF team, and certain CONCACAF teams can't be taken for granted. They kind of, as we say in Spanish, sacan las garras. They kind of like take out their claws like random moments. I swear it's like more impactful. The phrase is more impactful in Spanish. It doesn't make sense.
Understood.
Yeah. But no, I don't think it'll be an easy match. I do think Jimmy Lozano is going to revert to that starting 11 that worked for him in the first time. But, and as we mentioned before, Cesar Montes is back in contention. He's available, and he wasn't before. I still don't think he'll get that starting nod. I think it'll be Johan Vasquez once again. But we shall see. All players are available. You're coming off of a very interesting group stage. And something I like and I'm excited for is that all players keep saying that they're happy under Jimmy Lozano, which was not the case against Diego Coca. So,
yeah,
exciting.
I mean, it's been a tumultuous few months for the Mexican national team for sure. And again, that's not to say the United States men's national team hasn't had their issues. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Costa Rica, listen, like I said before, I think there's 4 teams that you can consider probably the top tier of CONCACAF, right? It's U.S., Mexico, Canada, and I throw Jamaica in there. I think their front line is very, very good, and they always seem to be a problem whenever teams play them.
Jamaica's not easy.
No, not easy at all.
not easy.
A lot of quality talent on Jamaica.
And Andre Blake, I've interviewed him twice, and every single time I want to remind him that he is a nightmare for Mexican national team fans because he stops everything, and I'm sure is in the nightmares of so many people
fans.
I know. So many fans, but yeah, he's really stopped some show-stopping shots from our end.
And I mean, they have Leon Bailey, Damari Gray, and Mikel Antonio, which are all 3 Premier League players. I mean,
great players,
really quality players. So Jamaica is up there in my mind. And then I think right below them ends up being Panama and Costa Rica. And
I think go like hand in hand.
Yeah, this Costa Rican team is not the Costa Rican teams that we've seen in the past. I think over the last, obviously at the height of what was it, 2014, I think it was when they made the World Cup. That was probably around their best time as a CONCACAF team. But again, they're not anything to, play around with. They're not a team that is going to go down lightly. They're not like some of these other teams. So it's going to be a challenge. But I do think, again, when we came into this tournament, Mexico was the favorites, in my opinion, because they brought in the most of their most of their top side. And so this is a game that they should win. So, and again, I think, with the addition of Damari Gray for Jamaica, they kind of give Mexico, if they get through Guatemala, they give Mexico a little bit of a run there in the semis. So maybe it's not a foregone conclusion that they'll make the finals, but they definitely should win this game, Mexico. And I think
I'm rooting for Guatemala.
Again, if I were a Mexican national team fan, or if Jamaica was on our side of the table and tables were turned or whatever, I'd be doing the same thing. So they should be Costa Rica though.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. But before we wrap up, we have to head into MLS. There was a midweek match day, which was very interesting, and we saw someone break MLS record for attendance, which was amazing. So for the first time ever, El Trafico LAFC against LA Galaxy was held in the Rose Bowl, which was a rescheduled match. It was originally supposed to kick off the 2023 Major League Soccer campaign, but it was postponed due to, I believe it was wildfires at the time, and the smoke, they were unavailable to play. And so
it was some weather related thing. I don't remember if that's the time when they had the snow over there in LA. I don't remember what was going on. Yeah, they had a big snowstorm this past. Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
Oh, it might have been. I don't remember, but it was weather oriented suspension for the game, and they just played it, albeit without their biggest narrative, which was Chicharito against Carlos Vela. Obviously, we know Chicharito suffered an ACL tear, so he's unavailable for the rest of the season. So it was just Carlos Vela on one side, I guess this time against Ricky Puig. But there was over 82,000 people at the Rose Bowl. It was sold out audience. And I've been to the Rose Bowl when it wasn't sold out, and it was chaos everywhere. So I can't even imagine what that atmosphere must have been like. It was a phenomenal game to watch. I really enjoyed it. Especially the narrative after Chiellini called Puig a clown. And so having Ricky Puig score again and doing the same celebration, be like, okay, he's a clown now, situation, I thought was enjoyable. And so LA Galaxy won. I believe it was 2-1.
2-1.
It was great. LAFC a little bit unlucky in the final third. They had their opportunities. But a great match altogether, like a really intense rivalry. Things got a little bit ugly on the field in that later half of the game, but I don't know. It was really exciting. I loved watching.
I think the LAFC LA Galaxy derby is probably MLS's best example of a derby, right? Of a rivalry match in England or in these other places where it feels like, no matter how good, and I'll bring in this because we're both fans of these teams, no matter how good Everton is and no matter how good Liverpool is, always seems to be a tough fought match, and always seems to be a match that is, it's not an easy match to win for either side. And obviously I say either side, but really Liverpool, because
that's so sad for you.
Never win.
I just want to make it clear to the audience that I'm the Liverpool fan.
Yes.
It'd be so embarrassing if they thought otherwise.
That's not true. I mean, let's not get in Everton. It's a depressing time right now.
It is, as why I would say
they're back. They're back in preseason camp. They haven't signed anybody. This could be a whole nother podcast. But yes, I think El Trafico is the best example of those derbies that we see that are these historic derbies. That no matter how good one side is, and no matter how bad one side is, they always seem to be, competing at the highest level when they play each other. And that showed again today or Tuesday when these two teams faced off and again, Chiellini called Puig a clown in the match.
He apologized after.
Yeah, but again, he did it, and against he scored against a very weak LAFC team, but now they've done it again. They've gone out there, they've won 2-1. Great job by the Galaxy, just a fantastic performance by them.
Even their standings also, because they're almost last place in the Western Conference, and LAFC is up there. They've struggled, and I think one of the most important parts of this rivalry is, as you mentioned earlier, like it doesn't matter how good or bad one team might be coming into this match, it's always intense. And as many as they expected to say LA Galaxy is going to fall, they're going to lose 7-0, like you really can't disregard any team, no matter how or what their form might be heading into it.
Yeah, no, I think I think that I think that when it comes to this match, I mean, it's fireworks all the time, and it was best time to have it on 4th of July when fireworks are part of the day of celebrating. And there were some phenomenal goals in this match, mind you. Tyler Boyd's goal, Ricky Puig's goal, both very, very good goals. There's been
phenomenal.
Yeah. So I mean, there's been screamers across the MLS. Honestly, it feels like for weeks now. I feel like every time we put out the goals of the week, it is just absolutely unbelievable goals. But yeah, I mean, when you sell out to a crowd, 82,000, you hope it lives up to the hype, right? And I think that this match lived up to the hype, lived up to everything the MLS wanted it to be. It is funny that we were talking about how the match was canceled at the beginning of the season. Oh, that'll give us a chance to see Chicharito versus Vela because Chicharito was hurt at the time. Now he's hurt again, so we didn't get to see that. But we did see some emergence of some new stars and some new LA Galaxy players performing at the highest level on the biggest stage. And this is one of the biggest stages in MLS, El Trafico. I think that's easy to say, aside from, when it comes to playoffs and when it comes to MLS Cup, there isn't really a regular season MLS game that compares to El Trafico. And they got 80,000 people, and it's a great sign for MLS moving forward that they can draw that amount of crowd, no matter who's playing. But, even for the biggest games 10 years ago, you weren't, 15 years ago, you weren't getting 80,000 at when Seattle played Portland. We weren't getting 80,000 at Lumen Field. So, it's a good sign for the MLS moving forward.
Yeah, and looking ahead to this weekend's games, I know it'll be difficult to balance international action with MLS, but there's one game in particular I'm very excited to watch, which is Houston Dynamo against Sporting Kansas City, because it brings two Mexicans together, HH against Alan Pulido, who might be on his last legs with Sporting Kansas City. Who knows this transfer window? But no, they're friends, they're fond of each other, but they haven't necessarily faced off in MLS because of injuries. Last season, obviously, Alan Pulido was injured with Sporting Kansas City. He faced a knee injury, so he was out for the majority of the season. And HH obviously faced spells, but it'll be the first time in this league that the two come face to face. And from what I remember, Alan Pulido told me in January that he doesn't often ask to trade jerseys with players, but he always asks Mexicans. And so we will likely see those two exchanging jerseys after the match, no matter who wins and no matter who's upset. I'm sure the two will come together and exchange that. So it'll be definitely interesting to watch. Plus, Houston Dynamo has slowly become like one of the most exciting teams for me. I know they're wildly inconsistent, but after speaking to Ben Olsen last week, I'm just so excited by what this team is capable of.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that match, right, and when you look at Ben Olsen even before the season, he said that even players. I think when we interviewed them during media day, they had come out and they said, this is a different, everybody seems to be buying in. Everybody was very excited coming into training camp, and it's showing. This was never going to be a team that was going to go from last place to first place. It's never going to happen. It's so hard to do, but they've been remarkably better than we saw last season. Yeah. And that's huge for Houston. And Houston is one of those teams who's like, you always expect them to be near the top, it feels like. And they haven't been that for a couple of years now. Seems like they're getting back to that. They put in some unbelievable performances. They beat LAFC twice in one season, or in 1 week.
One season as well.
Season as well, but 1 week even more.
1 week is just a bigger feat.
They've put in some really good performances at home. Like you said, a little inconsistent, but they're finding their way, and I think that's all you can ask for. It's a big step in the right direction for that Houston Dynamo team. For me, I'm going to go back to LAFC and say that this is one that I would look to watch for, because LAFC was playing San Jose. This is a game they've already lost, but this time around it feels different, right? Because this LAFC team, I think it's safe to say they're skidding right now. They're
really spiraling.
I believe they've won 2 of their last 11 games. That's not an LAFC team that we're used to seeing. No. And especially with the caliber of player that they have, and the fact that there aren't really many injuries or many players that they're missing. And they've been not very good. Not been able to put the ball in the back of the net. Denny Bouanga scored on Tuesday, but I think in the whole month of June, he only scored 1 or 2 goals.
Which is very Bouanga that we've been seeing.
And that's bad for LAFC because he was the replacement for Chicho Arango and was doing well and was really filling that hole very, very well. And now Chicho Arango is back in the MLS for a different team. And
I will go to war for Chicho Arango when it comes to what happened at LAFC. I think he was one of the most underappreciated and underrated player by the LAFC staff. A substitute who often came in and right away changed the dynamic of the game, scored right away, would provide great moments for the team, and was offloaded in a heartbeat after winning the trophy that he contributed to. So,
and I mean, you look at this team now, they're not much different from the team last year. We had this conversation very similar to Philly. Yeah. And you can see that when Bouanga is not on or Bouanga is not scoring, granted, Bouanga's played a lot of minutes for national team. They played a lot of minutes with CONCACAF, and maybe there's still a little bit of a hangover from that. But this team has lost games that we haven't seen them lose these type of games in a while. So, and against teams that they should be beating. So again, El Trafico is a different beast. So I'm not blaming them for that. But 2 wins in their last 11, that's not good for LAFC and for their standards. So I'm looking forward to seeing this one. And I think it's one to watch out for to see if they can get over the hump and get a win again, because Carlos Vela's comments about, we're struggling, look at everybody else, they're starting to look a lot worse now that they've only won 2 of their last 11.
Leon really kind of bumped them off the wagon.
Literally, though, they were flying at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and Leon was like, nope.
Miserable ever since.
So yeah, that's been interesting. But yeah, that's all from us. Tune in next week. We're going to preview Leagues Cup as everything goes on. Obviously, preview international duty, All-Star, as that is slowly creeping up on us. So stay tuned on this platform and all social media channels and our website, 90min.com/US for new
information. Catch us on Threads now.
Oh, we're on Threads now, yes.
We are on Threads if you're into that. If you don't like Twitter, you can find us there. Yeah, I just so you know. Really, that's the main thing. So but yeah, it's a lot to look forward to, so I'm excited.
Cool. Thanks for watching.
Peace.
Bye.